Have you ever met someone who, despite not being very good at something, thinks they're an expert? Or maybe you've underestimated your own abilities when, in fact, you're more competent than you realize? Today, we're going to talk about the Dunning-Kruger effect, a psychological phenomenon that shows how often the least competent people overestimate their abilities, while the more skilled tend to doubt themselves. Get ready to understand why you might be underestimating or overestimating your own intelligence. The Dunning-Kruger effect was first described by psychologists David Dunning and Justin Kruger in 1999 and refers to a curious psychological phenomenon. People with low skill levels in a particular area tend to overestimate their abilities, while those with more competence underestimate their own performance. In other words, the less you know about something, the more you think you know, and the more you know, the more you recognize how little you know. This paradox highlights how a lack of knowledge can lead to false confidence, while true expertise is often accompanied by humility and doubt. What explains this phenomenon? Dunning and Kruger found that the same skills required to be competent at a task are also necessary to accurately evaluate one's own performance. This means that if someone is inexperienced or lacks skill in something, they're not only bad at performing the task, but they also lack the cognitive tools to perceive their own incompetence. This creates a sense of overconfidence in their abilities that doesn't match reality. On the other hand, individuals with more knowledge and skill tend to underestimate how unique their competencies are, assuming that if they know something, others probably know it too. This leads the more competent to be more self-critical, resulting in the opposite phenomenon. They underestimate their own expertise. Thus, the Dunning-Kruger effect creates an interesting divide between those who think they know more than they actually do and those who, despite knowing a lot, believe they know less. Think about talent competition shows, where many contestants believe they're great singers or performers, but their lack of training prevents them from recognizing their limitations. At the same time, experienced singers may feel insecure about their performances because they are aware of the complexities and nuances they still need to improve on. The Dunning-Kruger effect follows an interesting cycle that can be divided into 4 main stages, each representing different levels of competence and perception. This cycle helps explain how ignorance affects self-esteem and confidence, and how learning can lead to a more accurate perception of one's own abilities. Let's explore these 4 stages. Unconscious incompetence. In this initial phase, the person not only lacks skill in a task or area of knowledge, but is also unaware of their lack of ability. They confidently believe they are more capable than they actually are. It's the stage where people tend to radically overestimate their abilities, believing they've mastered something they barely understand. Since they don't have the knowledge to assess their competence accurately, this lack of awareness creates a disproportionate sense of self-confidence. Conscious incompetence. As the person gains a bit more experience or knowledge, they begin to realize they're not as skilled as they once thought. This is the point where confidence starts to drop because they now have more awareness of their limitations. However, they may still lack the competence needed to improve significantly, but at least they recognize there's much to learn. Humility begins to emerge, and the person becomes more open to learning and improvement. Conscious competence. At this stage, the person has acquired enough skill and experience to perform the task well, but still needs focused effort to achieve good results. Confidence starts to rise again, but now it's more grounded in reality rather than an illusion of knowledge. While they're not yet an expert, the person knows what they're doing and understands their limitations, but also acknowledges their progress. This is the stage where conscious practice leads to continuous improvement. Unconscious competence. Finally, the person reaches the stage of unconscious competence, where their skills are so developed that they can perform the task almost automatically, without much mental effort. However, an interesting phenomenon occurs here. People tend to underestimate their ability, thinking that if they can do something easily, everyone else can too. This leads experts to often undervalue their own competencies because they don't realize that what's easy for them may be difficult for most. This cycle of learning and confidence shows how the Dunning-Kruger effect can lead people to misjudge themselves at different stages of competence. In the beginning, a lack of skill is accompanied by inflated confidence, while as knowledge and practice grow, perception adjusts, and confidence becomes more realistic. Imagine someone learning to play a musical instrument. In the first few months, they might think they're doing great, playing a few simple songs and believing they're close to mastering the instrument. However, when they encounter more experienced musicians or attempt more complex pieces, they realize there's much they don't know and that their skills are limited. As they continue practicing, they improve and become more competent, but the need to focus on technique still requires conscious effort. Years later, with consistent practice, playing the instrument becomes almost automatic. But at this stage, they might think that playing is easy and underestimate their skill level compared to beginners. The cycle of incompetence and conscious competence reminds us that learning is a gradual process, and that our perception of our own abilities can change drastically as we evolve. Recognizing which stage of the cycle we're in can help us better manage our insecurities and avoid the trap of unfounded self-confidence. The consequences of the Dunning-Kruger effect can be significant, both on a personal and social level. One of the key implications of this phenomenon is that people who overestimate their abilities often make poorly informed or rash decisions, believing they are more capable than they actually are. This can have serious repercussions, especially in areas like health, finance, or even politics. When someone without the necessary knowledge assumes they know enough, their decisions can negatively impact not only themselves, but also those around them. On a social level, the Dunning-Kruger effect can also contribute to the spread of misinformation. With elevated confidence and a lack of self-awareness about their own limitations, individuals who know little about a topic may speak with great authority, influencing others to follow their misguided opinions. This is particularly troubling in public debates and online discussions, where confidence is often mistaken for competence. As a result, misinformation spreads quickly, and well-informed voices may be silenced or ignored because experts tend to be more cautious in their statements. Moreover, the Dunning-Kruger effect can create a barrier to learning and personal improvement. If a person believes they already know everything they need to about a subject, they won't see the need to seek more knowledge or improve their skills. This lack of intellectual humility hinders growth and evolution, both individually and collectively. It can create a dangerous cycle. Those who most need to learn are the least likely to recognize that need. The spread of conspiracy theories and scientific misinformation is a clear example of this phenomenon. Individuals with little understanding of complex topics, such as public health or climate change, often speak with conviction, spreading incorrect information that, in turn, influences large groups of people. Meanwhile, experts who understand the nuances of the topic tend to be more cautious, sometimes being underestimated or discredited. Overcoming the Dunning-Kruger effect starts with self-awareness and the recognition that, in many cases, we don't know as much as we think. To combat the tendency to overestimate our abilities, it's essential to adopt an attitude of intellectual humility and remain open to learning and improving. Here are some practical strategies to recognize and overcome the effect. Seek honest feedback. One of the key steps to escaping the Dunning-Kruger effect is to ask for feedback from more experienced or objective people. By listening to evaluations from colleagues, friends, or mentors, we can get a clearer, more realistic view of our abilities. This practice helps adjust our perceptions and identify areas where we still need to improve. Invest in continuous learning. Knowledge is a powerful tool to overcome a lack of competence. By committing to constant study and practice, we expand our understanding of any area of interest. The more we learn, the more we realize how much there is left to know, which prevents us from falling into the trap of thinking we've mastered everything. Courses, reading, and the pursuit of new skills are essential in this process. Accept constructive criticism. Often, our pride or insecurity prevents us from accepting criticism. However, constructive criticism is essential for identifying blind spots and improving. Learning to see negative feedback as an opportunity for growth rather than an offense is key to breaking the cycle of misguided self-sufficiency. Acknowledge the value of doubt. Those who truly have expertise in an area know how vast and complex knowledge can be. Learning to embrace uncertainty and healthy doubt is a way to keep the mind open and receptive. Recognizing that having doubts is not a sign of weakness, but of intellectual maturity is an effective way to avoid the Dunning-Kruger effect. An example of how to overcome the Dunning-Kruger effect can be seen in the corporate world. Good leaders recognize that they don't have all the answers and surround themselves with advisors and experts who can fill knowledge gaps. By actively seeking collaboration and feedback, they make more balanced and effective decisions. This intellectual humility helps them avoid the trap of blindly trusting their own judgment. Ultimately, the key to overcoming the Dunning-Kruger effect lies in the willingness to keep learning and questioning rather than settling into a false sense of competence. By adopting a mindset of continuous learning and recognizing that there is always room to grow, we can avoid overconfidence and achieve a more realistic and effective level of competence. One of the most powerful tools for combating the Dunning-Kruger effect is developing intellectual humility. Intellectual humility refers to the ability to recognize that no one knows everything, that knowledge is vast, and that there is always more to learn. Those who practice this humility are more willing to admit when they don't know something, listen to other perspectives, and adjust their beliefs as new information emerges. Intellectual humility doesn't mean underestimating your own abilities, but acknowledging the limitations of your knowledge. It is essential for personal and professional growth because it opens the door to continuous learning. Rather than clinging rigidly to limited opinions or skills, people with this mindset understand that the learning process never ends. This mentality prevents the trap of thinking we know enough and instead promotes constant evolution. Advantages of intellectual humility. Constant pursuit of knowledge. Those who are intellectually humble are always open to learning. This leads to a deeper understanding of subjects and the development of new skills. Instead of seeing the unknown as a threat, these people view it as an opportunity to grow. Continuous improvement. Accepting one's own limitations creates a mindset of progress. When we recognize that we may be wrong or that there is room for improvement, we become more willing to seek feedback and invest in our own growth. More balanced decision-making. Leaders who possess intellectual humility tend to make more balanced decisions. They seek advice from experts, value teamwork, and avoid making rash decisions based on misguided assumptions. A classic example of intellectual humility can be seen in great business leaders like Bill Gates. Despite being one of the wealthiest and most successful men in the world, Gates continues to study, read avidly, and seek knowledge from experts in areas where he's not a master. He acknowledges that despite his success, there is always more to learn. This trait has been key to his ability to remain relevant and innovative over the decades. Scientists are another group that exemplifies intellectual humility. In their quest for answers, they know that no matter how much they've studied, there's always the possibility that new discoveries or evidence will challenge what they thought they knew. Their willingness to adjust their hypotheses and accept new data keeps them at the forefront of knowledge, avoiding intellectual complacency. Thus, intellectual humility is the antidote to the Dunning-Kruger effect. It reminds us that knowledge is vast, and that no matter how much we know, we're only just beginning to explore what's out there. By adopting this attitude of openness and continuous learning, we can avoid overconfidence and instead embrace a path of real and ongoing growth.